Online communities are doing marketing work free of charge, and I'm not buying it. I'm in the process of swapping out my old camera for a new camera, and it's taking much longer than expected. But I've been wanting to do this video for a while, and in a way I think it's kind of a continuation of my video on impulse buying, so maybe go ahead and check that one out if you haven't seen it yet. So what I've decided to do is to shoot this on a Panasonic camcorder from 2008. By the way, I think this was like the first big year that we did the Black Friday thing. There was a deal for this particular camcorder, and we were in line for a very long time to actually grab this for whatever kind of discount. Long story short, it got left behind. I was like, oh, I'll take it. It's actually kind of fun. And by the way, it's still going for like 200 bucks used, like in this same condition. It's kind of crazy. I don't know. The footage looks like this. This is the best it can do, really. I guess I can try some color grading real quick. Let's try that. Guessing it's not much better, but also I have another sneaky reason for wanting to use this camera for today's video, and that's because I'm going to be talking about what I refer to as commodity communities. I admit it's not a good name. We could call it like buy to belong as well. I think that's sort of catchy. It just refers to the kinds of usually online communities, but they can be in person as well, where they're very much focused on a single hobby, a single interest, and those just happen to be hobbies or interests that inherently involve buying a bunch of stuff. So just like off the top of my head, cars and car modding is absolutely one of those communities. I don't know, cosmetics potentially, maybe even more so skincare and hair care. Those have felt that way for a while now, I think. Warhammer, anybody into Warhammer, or really like any trading card game, you just have to keep buying almost all the time. There are tons of them, but my personal experience with these kinds of communities has been with music and music gear, photography. In the third one, I'm almost a little bit embarrassed to admit it, mechanical keyboards. I got swept into that community pretty darn hard and spent way too much money on related accoutrements. Do you want to keep it? Okay. All right. Do you want to? We got 7 hours of recording time. I don't mind any interruptions today. Okay. All right. And you might say, aren't all communities like that to some extent? Don't they all involve buying a bunch of stuff and constantly being presented with new products? And no, I don't think so. Sports, for one, if you're not at the professional level, or even if you just play like recreationally, you don't need that much. I would even argue that arts, especially like digital arts, you're kind of good to go once you have your basic setup. So what I'm really talking about here today are the communities where, between content creation on social media and any related forums or in-person meetups and all that stuff, are just absolutely saturated with new products, old products that are desirable, unique products, and as a member of the community, it's almost impossible to escape that extremely high level of exposure to stuff that you could buy. And because it's all specialized, because of the community element, because of the positive feelings associated with the hobby, and it's incredibly easy, at least for me, to justify buying the new stuff I may or may not need because of the community element and because there's always more and it's always being shoved right in my face. I don't think that these commodity communities are overall bad. I don't think that they're irredeemable. I think there are a lot of positive things about them and very practical ways in which we can minimize this element of hyper-consumerism. As I implied earlier, there have been a few different times in my life when I found myself swept up in a new hobby or returning to an older hobby and just being consumed. And I want to lay out how that process tends to happen for me, because I do think there's a pattern. So to begin with, I'm enticed by the hobby. That could come from absolutely anywhere. Just see a random video about it. I could see someone in real life engaging with the hobby, someone just talking about it. I don't have any issues with this part of the process. But up next is the part where I inevitably start searching things about that hobby on the internet. So let's say it's photography. Even if my searches are the most innocent, the most like non-product oriented things in the world, I could just be searching like, I don't know, I want to see an interview with Ansel Adams, and he gave great interviews, by the way. Seems like a really smart guy. I don't know, he's great.
But you use the camera almost like a poet would use the pen to write in, or a painter the brush.
I guess so. If it isn't too pretentious to say that, I guess that's close to it, yeah.
But as we know, for a few decades now, the internet has been optimized in the direction of selling people stuff. So even if I am not going out there and searching, hey, most expensive camera to buy right now, they will know. They still know that I am interested in photography in some sense, and they will start recommending stuff that is in any way related. And all of a sudden, the floodgates just open. I'm seeing ads related to photography. I am seeing just a huge amount of product reviews. I am seeing tutorials that oversimplify everything and say, this is the one thing you really need to know to nail composition. And it's really hard, I think, to back away from that. So even if you as a person are doing a really good job of stepping away from that topic for whatever reason, there will continue to be really consistent sources of enticement, or even temptation if we want to make it more negative, things that could potentially pull you back in to that community and its related products. So the next step for me is then full immersion. If it's something I'm really interested in and I actually am engaged with it, I'm there. I'm looking at old articles, I'm looking at new product reviews, I'm in it. And again, these communities are great and not so great at the same time. I think they can often be passionate, they can be really genuinely helpful, they can be creative, and at the same time they can be extremely one-sided, they can be extremely biased, gatekeepy, condescending at times depending on who you're talking to, and absolutely saturated with direct or indirect appeals to buy stuff. Even if someone creating a post is not saying, hey, I'm marketing this thing, any positivity around it or any mentions of a given product related to something you like, that can function as marketing as well, especially for someone who's more vulnerable to impulse buying, or I would say in general to beginners who they don't understand the landscape. They don't know what they actually need and what they don't. They don't know what their style is. They don't know what their voice is. They don't know which corner of this hobby they're really going to fit into. And as a result, I think end up flailing around and buying a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm saying that because that's me. Not so much with photography, but with lots of the keyboards. Okay, look, like this is the keyboard on my desk right now. This was too expensive for what it is. It's incredibly impractical. Most people would probably not recommend it, but I love it. And vice versa. There are keyboards I've gotten that the community loved and I can't stand. Those things happen when you're a beginner and you're excited about something, but you don't know yet where you really want to go with it. Here are a few of the reasons why I get a bit concerned. For one, the current rates of manufacturing and production for new products, even niche products, are crazy right now. This rate of manufacturing and its associated consumption are not sustainable. I don't think that's news to anybody who found their way to this channel, but it's absolutely one of the reasons why I get a little bit worried by some of these commodity communities. I think that these kinds of communities are rapidly becoming normalized. Just the idea that like, oh, that's how it is. This is just what it's like when you get into a hobby. You just have to deal with the fact that there's just a parade of products at all times. And if you want to be a member at all, you don't get to choose, basically. Involuntary exposure to the products in particular. I also feel that commodity communities, buy to belong, whatever, I think that they thwart anti-consumption efforts both on a broad scale as well as the micro scale, the personal scale. If you are trying to consume less, these are not the places to be. I also think that these communities are just downright, I don't want to say unsafe necessarily, that's not exactly what I mean, but they are not places where you want to be if you have problems with impulse buying. It's a bad environment, you know? It's like someone who's trying to stop drinking, but then it's like, oh, well, 3 days out of the week, I'm gonna go hang out in a bar. Like it's much more difficult. And lastly, commodity communities, that's so many syllables. These communities are essentially, at a certain point, performing unpaid marketing work. And even if they're not doing it for just like one specific product or one specific brand, then they are absolutely doing free marketing for an entire product category or ecosystem. There's been some great discussion specifically around the concept of unpaid micro labor, where you entice people through various means to do unpaid work, in essence, that's just really small. It doesn't seem like it's something that should be paid necessarily. It's just like, oh, of course I can do that, or I'm passionate about this, I'll go ahead and do it. But at the end of the day, enormous companies that don't need any kind of financial help are benefiting hugely from all this unpaid labor. Critiquing the state of these kinds of communities, I'm definitely not alone. I am not at all the first person to bring up this issue in any sense. And in fact, I think it's kind of a positive that there have been people in these communities, whether, just posting on Reddit or full-on content creators this is their career, is being involved in these communities and even participating in marketing activities, who are able to identify this stuff. Just to bolster the case, I have a few clips here for you from some of my favorite channels across a wide range of different communities. I'll just let them speak for themselves.
But the thing is, as consumers, we get sucked into that. We think that we need higher resolution video and faster frame rates because the marketing people told us we need it. But really, if you just want to take some nice photos, you don't need a fancy camera.
Time after time, gear manufacturers release new hardware gears with limited functions, which you can get everywhere for free. And then they send them out to really creative influencers, letting them make music and a video, just to trigger your purchase, and then make more money. And after you bought that gear, doodled around a little bit, realizing that you're still not good at making music, and thinking about quitting on it, they release another new gear.
I think we're long overdue for a chat about the state of the YouTube photography community. I just want to say that if you have a camera already and it does the job, don't feel like you have to buy £1,000, £2,000, £3,000 camera or lens or anything else. Because at the end of the day, this controls this, and if this hasn't got any more progression since the last shiny thing that you've bought, you're gonna get exactly the same result.
Clearly, other people are recognizing some of these issues at work and want to resolve them. At the very least, they want to address and acknowledge them. There's no singular bad guy here. It's a collective thing, it's a collective problem, and that also means that there isn't a simple solution. I hope I've made it clear that I don't think these communities are rotten. But when you look at a community, when you look at community-specific content creation, they suggest an invisible viewer, an archetypical member of that community. And as they stand right now, I think that these communities feel like they're catering to some non-existent person who is just endlessly interested in a single hobby and who has infinite money to throw at that hobby. Someone who's just interested in every single new product. They want to learn about it and potentially buy it. And I don't think that person exists. Even if they do, I do not believe for a second that that represents the majority of any community at all. And so I really think that it's up to us, the members of these communities, to make them more welcoming, more balanced overall. I think it's positive at all times to de-emphasize purchases and gear for a hobby. And I'm so happy to see that some fantastic creators and community members already recognize this. I would just like to see that even more. Beyond the bare minimum, there is no single piece of gear that you absolutely need. There is no single piece of gear that will suddenly make you vastly better at your hobby. And when it comes to the nicest, most expensive, most interesting gear in the world, there is a good chance that you wouldn't even like it if you had it. You and your skills, your creativity, and your enthusiasm are always the biggest pieces of the puzzle. And those are the things that are going to keep you interested in a hobby for, you know, not just days, not just months, but for many years. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. Really appreciate you being here. I really appreciate you being able to look at this image quality for so long. I don't know, maybe this doesn't bother other people. It bothers me. Anyway, that's all I have for today. Thanks for visiting the channel. We've been around for a little while now. Please feel free to check out my other videos. I would really appreciate you joining this community. And if you haven't noticed, we're not worried about you buying stuff here. I'm not trying to sell you stuff. I don't run ads on the channel. So just happy to talk about these things. And yeah, have people willing to listen. Until next time, take it easy.